Okay, welcome everybody. Appreciate you joining us. The stock jump. We're going to talk about stock today. I've got Brian White from Future Aza. We've got Nick Gibbs from Investing Against the Grain. You can go check out, and we're doing a co-stream on all of our YouTube channels and our X channels as well. So, of course, the first thing we need to talk about is the stock. Tesla stock jumped last night. Oh, that's not very helpful. Here we go. $35. It is currently now at $287. Nick Gibbs, this is right super close to what you said was going to happen. We've been talking about stock, and when it was at 220 about 2 months ago, you pretty well the sole voice who was saying that if things turn out right with the 10-10 event, with the earnings event, and then finally with the election, you saw that it could reach $300 by the end of October. Now it's only been a week later, and we're pretty close to it, and that's a bit of a shocker for people. So it seems like you happened to gambled outright. Did you? Yeah, that's great. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thoughts are everybody gets lucky every once in a while. These are just predictions for fun, not for any investment advice. But yeah, I mean, 5 days off from essentially being right on the money. Can't be too upset about that. I was talking to Brian before we went live here. My real question is, how high do we go before we get a little pullback? And I think Brian said the best. We have a nice little sugar rush, is what we have right here.
Oh yeah.
So enjoy. Well, yeah. I mean, so
Mm.
my opinion is enjoy it. I do think that you can't. I don't think you normally have such a big move without a retracement. That's healthy. You want that. You don't want straight up. But this is all backed by, you know, euphemism on Elon as the Donald Trump trade. So there's no fundamental thing here. There's nothing specific about the business. There can be hopium, but I would say I would say that you're gonna see a little pullback eventually. But enjoy it for today. It's like today's a great day to enjoy this as a Tesla investor. Your politics aside, maybe if you were in the Harris camp and you're upset about that, at least this can bring a smile to your face for today.
So I'm going to agree with Nick on this. We were just briefly touching on this before the show was kicked off, but this is a sugar rush. When the whole market is up, which is kind of what we're seeing, did the fundamentals change for everybody? I mean, I guess a little, but until we actually see those gains, there's going to be movement. The stock market always moves. It has to move. It must move. It does move. And that means it has to move in both directions. We could go up another 10, 20 million dollars before it comes back down, but it always comes back down. There are floors. Maybe this is the new floor. I think it's much too soon to say. But my thought on the company is, if it's a car company, it's valued much too high. It's not a car company. It's something different. It's something so far beyond that. It's Amazon in the early days. Yeah, they're selling books and they just branched out to DVDs and small appliances. But there's going to be something else coming, and we already know what it is. I would love to invest in AI, but I don't know who could possibly monetize it, except I do know one company, and I'm invested in them. It's Tesla. And the same with robotics. There's a lot of beautiful demos out there. But if you're going to make a bot that is exactly as good as Optimus, but you can't manufacture it for the same price, I know who I'm voting for.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little different than the two of you. I think this is a floor. I think it's going to continue to go up. We've been waiting for a long time. And I'm not a technicals guy, but as I interviewed all these other real technical analysts, 272, 269 was the actual mark that we kept never being able to burst through. There's a lot of resistance level there. We've been able to pass that a couple of weeks ago. This is a clear breakthrough. What does that mean? It means it's a much closer to 300 than it is to fall. I know what you're saying, that this is a sugar high, that it's not based on fundamentals, but it's also, in my mind, kind of like Tesla stock was being held back, as opposed to what you're saying, which is, it's just popped for no reason. That's not what's happened here. It is a new economy. We've got the interest rates going to be cut in 2 days, and Thursday, actually tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday.
Are they?
Yes. It's possibly built in already, possibly even more. And then with this, would obviously I think also this belief that Elon Musk and Trump, Elon's going to have more benefit for Tesla than not, than if it was the kind of rhetoric that others were saying what would happen to Elon or his companies. So I think this is, I'm not ready to call that. No, we're just going to go straight up. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that this is a lot more likely that we'll go to 300 than it is to pop below, 260s again or anything lower than that at this point.
I have no predictions on those. My dartboard and crystal ball are both in the shop. Pretty unusual for it to happen at the same time, but hey, it's how I roll.
I agree. This is Dan Ives. Let's listen to what he said right after the election last night. He said a Trump win could add $40 to $50 to Tesla's stock price. Could this be the catalyst Tesla needs for its next big move? It's a short video. Let's watch it.
Now is Wedbush Securities senior equity analyst Dan Ives. Dan, great to have you here. Taking a look at Tesla. A lot of people see this as a Trump trade. By the way, we didn't show it just now, but the Russell future's up over 5%, another Trump trade. But I want to focus on Tesla for a minute. You just put out a note a short time ago. You said this election, potentially the election of Donald Trump, he looks to have a commanding lead in Electoral College. It would actually be good for Tesla, even though it would generally be bad for EVs because of credits would be taken away and other factors that would be headwinds for the industry. Why is it good for Tesla?
It's a dream scenario for any Tesla bull. I mean, I think this could ultimately add $40 to $50 per share to Tesla stock right off the bat. And we could now be talking about $1 trillion and a half market cap for Tesla. Because first off, from an EV perspective, if Trump gets elected, he'll pull the EV tax credits. But that, from a scale and scope perspective, is a positive for Tesla. And that's huge here. And I think the other thing is if Trump gets in, he will fast-track autonomous FSD. Cybercab could get pulled forward about a year. This is really, for a Tesla bull, if you wake up to this, it's exactly what you want to see. And, of course, Musk will clearly have a big voice in a Trump administration.
I want to get to that in just a minute, but I just want to be clear. So you're saying for Tesla, the tailwind is just less regulation. The idea that a Trump administration potentially, again, NBC News has not called the election yet, despite the fact that former President Trump has a lead in the Electoral College. But you're saying a Trump administration would have less regulation and allow Elon Musk and Tesla to push forward autonomous driving and full self-driving.
Oh, yeah, I think if you look what's happened in China, I think that would be a top initiative. To fast-track FSD autonomous. There's been a lot of regulatory hurdles. And this is something, Musk talked about robotaxi today. Obviously, the initial sentiment was negative. This is going to be the key. Because ultimately, I think Tesla is the most undervalued AI name in the market. And you look what's happened here. This is just more and more going to unlock that opportunity for Tesla and Musk.
All right, that's a Tesla bull for you, being very, very bullish. Just to give everybody a heads up of what's happening today, we're going to be talking about Tesla stock for the first 30 minutes. And then the second half, I've invited Richard Hoffman. He's a lawyer. He can give us some of his kind of just a little bit more context about what could happen. How could Elon legally conflict of interest issues with his companies today? How could he become part of the government or help with the government? We'll do that in the second half. So right now, let's talk stock.
I want to address Dan Ives' comments. It's fun that he's saying trillion and a half, and your response is that makes him very bullish. I see $1 trillion, and I would not consider myself a hyperbole, because if you look at, my gosh, just the four big ones: automotive, Megapack, stationary storage, robotics, and autonomy. To think that, any one of those could absolutely go to the moon, and not all of them have to. They can all contribute to it.
Yeah. He's saying now. He's saying $50, $60 jump like this week, and then like recent now. Then we'll be $1 trillion company
in the
again.
Immediate future.
Yeah.
Oh well, that's okay.
That's what I interpreted what I heard.
Oh, that'd be cool, but interesting. Okay.
The all-time high is 410. That happened on November 4th, 2022. So that was 3 years ago. It's November 6th today, right? So almost exactly 3 years ago, we hit the all-time high for 410. And that we were over $1 trillion. So for people to say, oh, I just can't see Tesla hitting $1 trillion. Oh my gosh, that's crazy numbers. Okay, yes, at that time, it was free money. There was also money. The interest rates were really low. But you counter that, balance that with today, look how many more cars we're selling, what the future is now having with all the businesses that we've now developed, like you're saying. So it's not
A question,
it's not
a
out of the
question I have on Dan's comments for both of you would be, was approval of autonomy really in question? Was that something that was not
I
a
say
foregone
yes.
conclusion?
I would
Really?
say this is the way I position it: is that if a government entity wanted to had real grudges against a certain company, they could implement and slow things down. They could implement things that can really harm it if they wanted to. Not that it, that's not the path that would have happened anyway. So if they did, in this case, it's less likely that that would happen at this point.
But you think it was you think it was something that was likely to happen?
I never thought of it that it was likely to happen, but that's what some people were saying.
Nick?
All right. Hold on to your seat, Herbert. I don't want to.
Love it. Go for
Okay, so first things first.
Yeah.
I believe we should all listen to people who are right a lot. In other words, as Elon would say, people who are less wrong. Dan Ives, while I think he's a nice guy, while I do think he tends to have some interesting takes, everybody in the Tesla community has very short memory that just about 4 or 5 months ago, he was crapping on Elon, saying he essentially stayed in his lane, not talk about politics or anything. And now he's back on the hype train, right? He didn't go as bad or as far as Ross Gerber did, but in my mind, he kind of did the same thing, and he's just jumping on the bandwagon again. He's been on the bandwagon again since maybe like June-ish, so that's fine. And again, he never went too extreme the way Ross did, but just keep that in mind. As far as his whole take, literally everything he said there it's just not a cogent segment at all, because everything he's saying is as if autonomy hasn't happened yet because we've been waiting for regulation. No, that's garbage. We could still do it at different states. We could do it in Texas. We could do it in Florida. The problem is that we're not there yet. The Cybercab hasn't been built yet. We're not there yet. All right. So regulation, yeah, that's looking forward. That will be a top issue. That would be nice if we could do it on a federal level. But right now, that's not the limiting factor, and that doesn't pull anything forward at all. The technology isn't there yet. It's almost there. It's not there yet. So that's just a silly statement. And I do think that there are some like upsides potentially, because Trump getting elected was very positive on a lot of things with Elon. But okay, there's always two different sides of every person who gets elected. There's the things that you'll do to get elected, and then what do you do once you're in seat? All right, like what do you actually do? Now, I'm obviously bullish on Trump, but I'm still not naive, and I will wait until I see things actually get done. It's the same way all these other Wall Street analysts say they don't want to factor in autonomy until it's showing up on the P&L. Yet now we're here talking about adding $40, $100 to the share price, and what happened? Absolutely nothing, other than a president just got reelected who is at least friendly to Elon. Like, I like that. That's
Uh-oh. Is he frozen?
He's frozen.
I'm going to just say that I agree with pretty much everything Nick just said. Oh, you cut out there for a bit, Nick. I agree with everything you said. Waymo is already licensed to do these drives. There was, all these companies spent billions and billions of dollars. They weren't going to end that regulation. I don't think this changes anything for Tesla. Either it works or it doesn't. And if it works, it works. And if all of a sudden Tesla's got an autonomous fleet in other countries, but not in the US, the outcry would be insurmountable. The idea that, that it would not happen, to me, this is the first I've heard of it. I don't understand it.
Can I say why I think the stock's up today? Like where the actual hope is? And
yes, I mean, why? Yeah. First of all, yeah, I agree. A lot of things you just said, absolutely agree with it. By the way, I don't agree with Dan saying that it's going to jump up by $50 to $60. I have a prediction of what it's going to do. It's going to jump by 14% at $35. That's what it did. 14%, $35. My point being that, yes, you're right. It's over. That would be an overreach of thinking that that's the case of what's going to happen. But, and you're right. We don't know what Trump's going to do. So this is just a kind of sentiment, right? A sentiment shift. So
Yeah.
is it permanent? No, this is not permanent. But is it a sugar high like you guys initially positioned at the beginning? I don't think so. I think it was being held back. So there's that middle ground, somewhere in between there. It's not quite a sugar high, but it's not quite, guaranteed. This fundamentals have changed all of a sudden. There is
Herbert.
this thing called when you have a new government coming in, the markets just, and you can see it. This isn't just a Tesla rally, right? This is he just said it, right? The 500 also went up.
Do you think we see a 270 again or 300 first?
Oh, I just said it at the beginning. I said we're more likely to hit 300 at this point than we do 270. And the reason is that the 270 mark was a resistance level, and then it's going to go up to 300, and then it'll be there, and it'll be stuck there for a while until the following year or something like that. I don't know. I don't care about, I don't really do short-term price predictions. I actually don't have a price target for this company. People assume that I do. I've never said what I think it is, but I'm just saying it's more likely at this point and where we're at to go up to 300 than it is to fall back down in the next month. We're going to get more, the economy is improving. We'll see those numbers as they pop up, but we're going to see more rate cuts. This all is very supportive for Tesla at this point.
Yeah, I would just say if you're going to use, I know you don't, Herbert, but in general, technical analysis,
Yeah.
and I'm not a technical analysis person at all.
Right.
It's not my thing. But if you are, then yes, you're right. 272 was resistance, but then you also got to remember that there's two gaps to fill, one at like 220 and now one all the way down at 250. So gaps always got to fill, right? So technical analysis people say. So I would
So
say we got.
I wanted to put something in here real quick. Today at 3 p.m., Herbert is having a Cyber Bulls session, and I think today is a very important day for Cyber Bulls. Please, everybody, check that out. It will be on his YouTube and on X, and I will be there in the chat. I mean, I won't be chatting necessarily, but I'll be there. I'll be watching.
Wow. Thank you, Brandon. It's actually just a space, and we're going to talk about the politics of what happened. And then tomorrow we'll do the actual live stream. We're going to talk about the stock as well.
Very exciting.
Yeah. So fundamentals. Let's talk about that. You initially said that there is nothing fundamental has changed with Tesla. It was just an election. Is that true?
No.
Right. Not exactly true, right? Let's break it down. Yeah.
What's changed?
Potential has changed. The potential to have less investigations, like I consider it lawfare. I'm talking about politics now, but lawfare against Elon Musk and his companies. The potential for federal regulations for autonomy, the potential to get rid of all these mandates that, while some people think help Tesla, I think in general you're obscuring reality, and you're also turning a lot of people off from even exploring EVs because people don't like to be mandated anything. Mandate someone to do something is a quick way to turn them off. Just look at a kid. It's a very innate thing. You tell me to do something, I don't want to do it. Relationship, with other countries, I think will be, for selling Teslas in the States, I think will behoove us, especially if there's more of a looking in, trying to build within. I think that'll help us as well. There's a lot of things that could be positive. Just in general, global economy could become better if Trump can actually end these wars. If we can actually get to a place where we're cutting spending and we get to a place where we're not running these crazy deficits, right? Like there's lots of things that could happen for the economy, and that would obviously trickle into Tesla and help rates cut down. But you mentioned there's a potential rate cut coming up. It's likely to happen. I think the odds are like 90%.
Mm-hmm.
It's also likely that will be the last cut for a long time if you're looking at the bond market. All right. It's not looking good. Last jobs report, we only had 12,000 jobs added. The economy's on very shaky ground. We did a 50 basis point cut, and what happened? Yields went the wrong way, right? The bond market said, I don't know about this, right? So we're in a very interesting place. The Fed barely had the ability to auction off their treasury notes in this last auction, right? Like it was getting sketchy. So there's a lot of things that need to get fixed. And I think yesterday or last night, this morning, this election, what we're seeing in the markets, it's like, okay, maybe we can get in there, end some wars, do some reasonable things, stop illegal immigration, look within, and start cutting spending. Like maybe we can get on track. And I think that's all you see in the market right now. It's that. And obviously Tesla benefits from that in the ways I mentioned. I think that's what we see right now. Now, that's great. These are all words that were said. Cool. I love your words. I want to see your actions now. Now we got to put all that and implement it and make sure it goes the way we think it's going to go.
Here's the difference. Okay, this wasn't just an election, and then you've got a president, and you don't know which half of he said is going to actually happen, which half was just words. This is Elon Musk fully supporting this presidential candidate, who's now become president, who's now going to be part of the the group that's going to at least have his ear, and Elon is going to fix a lot of things, and very likely it will impact Tesla, for example. It's just one of the companies that will benefit. You know what I mean? It's more likely that will happen than if it was the other way around. So it's more like, what could Elon do now that he is now got the ear of not just the president, but Congress? It's across the board. And so if they wanted to create these laws, they could. We'll have Richard Hoffman here, and we can explain a little bit the legalities of what could happen here. I don't know, but it's just the likelihood of that. You know what I'm saying? This isn't just a presidential election. This is Elon being the leader of Tesla, being able to now influence the future of, things that might impact it.
So I have a test for both of you, and this is on your ability to zoom out and see other perspectives. Can you see ways in which this could be bad for Tesla?
Yeah, that's lots of ways. Go ahead, Nick.
I just like my peace, always peace. Yeah, that's a good question. How could it be bad for Tesla? Yeah, so,
I mean, overhauling the IRA incentives is going to be a bad thing for consumers here in the U.S. when the Chinese government is absolutely increasing their incentives to try to build the EV market. I've been saying that electric vehicles aren't just a car; they're a smart car. This is a important. If they make the best electric vehicles because they sell more, and then they're able to continue to improve the technology, they're going to win the global market because it's got a smart technology in it. But I think it would be a huge mistake if they got rid of the incentive. I know Elon has said we don't need it, we don't need the incentive, but if you don't get it in the U.S., you don't need it. Tesla will still win, but the Chinese government continues to pump even more, and then I know you're going to stop them with these rules that they can't sell into the U.S. You're protecting your own base while they're conquering the globe with hundreds of EV companies that are all giving motivation, all of their consumers being motivated and giving money to buy these things. They sell more, they build better cars. What's going to happen in the future? So,
yeah, I think a lot of that can be dealt with pretty. I don't want to say easy, but I think there's definitely ways to deal with that. As far as selling, like, here's the thing. Talk about zooming out. Right? Let's zoom out. How could this be really bad for Tesla? Well, this could be really bad for Tesla. We don't get our house in order, and we continue to run these crazy deficits.
No, I understand all that. I'm very clear on the ways Trump could help this, but in order to be sure that we're looking at the full picture, I'm asking you to look at the other side and see if you can see any value in any of their arguments. Because Herbert pointed out, the removal of IRA would impact a number of buyers. Most importantly, it would impact other manufacturers who are not competitive. I mean, even with the incentives, they're struggling and they're losing money. If the battery manufacturing credit goes away, that would increase Tesla's cost of goods sold by thousands per car out of the gate. Would that impact sales in the U.S., do you think?
No, I don't.
Okay.
And they could actually increase the incentives for the oil and gas industry. You've heard, drill, baby, drill. They could, in fact, support that too. And so, but again, the whole point I'm saying is that it's not just a Republican win. This is Elon being part of it. So maybe what Elon can do and say, okay, well, you can get rid of the IRA credit, fine, but you need to cut the oil and gas incentives too. That's how you deal with that. And he might be able to influence that.
Yeah, tangent, sorry. You know what's funny that was never mentioned at all was the fact that drill baby drill, you can't keep drilling. You just can't. The world's awash in oil right now. They're trying to keep the prices up, but there's so much oil being pumped that you can't just keep. I mean, yeah, I think in the Permian at best it's like $40 a barrel before you're just screwed. Ultra deep sea exploration and drilling, that's $65 still. Like you're just gonna lose. Like there's only so much you can drill. Like it was funny that it never got brought up. But it's the reality. Every person who works in the oil field is always looking at that dollar per barrel because they know at what point they're out of a job. As someone who used to work out there, trust me, you know exactly what your day rate needs to be or what the dollar needs to be to meet your day rate. But that never got brought up. I don't think that you'll see a lot of extra incentives to drill. I don't think you'll see. I do think you'll probably see a lot of the EV tax credits go away, which could help Tesla in the short run. Another sugar high, pulling, shifting left on the schedule there. But what I was going to say is, what could hurt Tesla and every other company is if Trump gets in there and he doesn't let Elon do Elon things when it comes to ideas for cutting. Because I believe that we are really in an existential crisis right now when it comes to our expenses as a country and our national debt. And I do think that this is one of the this might be the only opportunity that we will have in the rest of our lives to actually get this in order. You have a president who isn't going to worry about getting reelected, so he doesn't have to worry about that. And you've got someone like Elon partnering up. Other than that, I don't see any way, any reason why politicians won't just care about getting reelected on the next election, just being self-serving. It's been the same cycle over and over, and it's the first window where I see we're like, hey, there's actually something that could be done here. Trump won't care about getting reelected. If anything, he'd be more caring about his legacy, so that could help. And Elon's in there, and we know Elon knows how to do this. But if we don't fix this, guys, we're spending more on interest than we are on our military. And our growth, we're growing, but inflation's growing too. And it's just going to keep.
I would caution that the members of Congress and Senate are almost always all up for re-election, and that those are the people who actually make a lot of the important decisions. Now it looks like the Republicans will have. Well, that's the thing, is the president's powers are limited. He can suggest legislation. He doesn't introduce it. But and Congress has to approve the spending. And my concern is that now that the dog has caught the car, that they've got control of all these houses, they will be control of all these branches. They will be expected to deliver on their promises. Agreed. And I hope that people get what they ask for, because there's no excuses.
I couldn't agree more. Listen, this is the beautiful thing about this country. And this is why you love blue cities in red states, like Austin, right? Like you love this because you get the best of both worlds. You get the physical discipline, all the niceties of a conservative, politics, but you also get the beauty of the liberal side of things, the arts, the I don't know, just the thinking bigger, thinking different, like that uniqueness. Like you get that nice melody of it. But right now, with an all Republican government at this point, you're right, Brian. You guys said you're going to do this, put up or shut up, right? And so to me, this is the only way it's going to happen. And the reason that this could actually work this time is because, look, Trump just essentially shows that he has a mandate. And if you want to get reelected, you're best off right now sticking with that guy. And if that guy is trying to push something, you're going to want to be tied to him. You don't want him to come out later saying that this is the person, or I'm not going to campaign for him. It's just a very rare moment. Like a situation like this has only ever happened one other time, I believe, where you have someone who was elected, voted out, reelected, can see how things were done before, finally understands how it works to get in there, how the cabinet members work, who to trust, who not to trust. And again, he doesn't care about getting reelected. Like that won't be a thing. So it's just rare. And I don't think we'll have a situation like this again. I mean, you guys tell me, I mean, again, because you asked me to think bigger about how this could affect Tesla or go wrong for Tesla. If we don't get this right, when are we ever going to get this right? When are we ever going to actually look at our spending?
Well, okay, I mean, yes, all that's a big issue, but
Whatever.
no,
Well,
I mean, I'm not saying whatever, but
yeah.
it's a yes, it's an issue.
And I
It is
appreciate
the
you.
issue. It is the issue.
Well,
it is the issue. I guess
spending other people's money is very easy, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see what ideas they come up with to make some corrections. Adding laws are easier to add than remove. If you look at, there's a lot of laws that just feel like, oh, we'll just put this in place for now, and then you're stuck with it for 100 years, 200 years. So it'll be interesting to see, because whenever it comes to a spending cut, it affects some district or many districts, and the more districts it affects, the less likely it is to pass. And if you're looking at something like a Doge level cut, where it's going to be, trillions of dollars, you're not going to have an easy go of getting legislation like that passed. It'll be interesting to see how it goes and what they think the problem with the situation is.
Okay. So back to the stock before Richard Hoffman joins
Yes.
us. We will show this table here of what can happen on different scenarios. And in the case of a Trump win with U.S. Congress majority, we'll go through each of these things that can impact Tesla or the kind of rules and laws that they might put in place. But Tesla in general, I do. Would you guys agree with this statement that regardless of the outcome of the presidential election, Tesla is, as a business, has righted the ship. They are, as an auto business, they're growing their sales again. They've got new affordable models coming out. They got advancements in the autonomous business, and they've got advancements in the bot business. They've got advancements in the energy business. All of these are early, but they're now much more mature, getting more mature every day. But more importantly, the auto business has turned around with higher gross margins. That regardless of what would have happened, they, as a company, they're much healthier now anyways. And then all we were just debating is whether or not in which outcome would have been better for Tesla or not. The stock specifically, we're talking about the stock right now. You know what I mean? Like
I agree. I agree completely. To me, the stock is the company, because I always look at the longer term horizon. There was no outcome to this election that would have meant, oh no, I'm selling my Tesla. This is bad. This is terrible. So the company is stronger than all that, I think.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't really remember your entire question. I'm just being honest here with you guys.
Well, just saying that regardless of the outcome, the company is pretty healthy at this point anyways, and it's headed in the right direction regardless.
I think so. Yes. But I don't think regardless. Here's the thing. I don't think, I mean, maybe you guys would disagree, but there was clearly a pointed attack from the current administration towards Elon Musk and his companies. Like, I don't think there was any denying it. Like, it was pretty blatant. And I think this definitely makes things a lot easier. There's a lot less friction now, assuming things remain friendly.
Okay.
Is there anything on that Benchmark Mineral thing you wanted to address?
Yeah. I'm waiting for Richard to come join us. So before that, though,
Oh,
Nick,
sure.
You did a good job. You stuck your neck out.
I know.
and agreed to give me some price targets. You had set $300 by October 31st. We're pretty close there, 290, 286. What's your expectation now for stock price if you are to guess on what could be by the end of this year and what could it be for the first quarter of next year?
Oh, so first I think we pull back to like 264 at some point. Before we get to 300 would be my guess, but who knows? I do think we have a pullback. Um, and then I don't know. I think it's really going to depend on at this point, the market, I think, wants to see things from Tesla. And it's not deliveries and it's not FSD point release updates. I think the market wants to see the new vehicles that have been talked about. They want to see an actual autonomous vehicle out there running somewhere in alpha beta test, whether it's Palo Alto or somewhere else. Doesn't matter. I think at this point we could see like a little bit of a Trump Elon pump, right? And maybe we stay between 300 and 260s, and we trade in that range now, which we haven't been trading that range. But I think to really see that next level, Herbert, some of the things that have been talked about, people need to see. And I think that's the next gen vehicles. That's seeing a test of autonomy in some city, someplace, somewhere. And I think if you see that happen, then I could see us, you said that whenever that happens, I think we move quickly into like the, from 3 to 4 to 5.
Okay, so the new vehicles should happen in the first quarter of next year, right? First half of next year for sure. That seems to be the consistent communication by Tesla.
I would say if you saw that, you're going to add about $100 to the stock.
And both of those won't. Both of those. First, you got the refresh of the Juniper. Then you've got additional affordable models. All three, minimum three, should actually come out by first half of next year. And I think we all agree that it's not going to be this, unveil and then it's going to be sold years later or 6 months later. It's actually going to be announced and maybe sold sooner than later, right? It's like actually in production by second half of next year. So if that's the case, I agree with you. That's a whole new segment, target TAM that's available for Tesla, and an analyst and investors can go, my gosh, Tesla's got new vehicles. This is going to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. And when to be clear, I don't think a refresh Y will do that. It's got to be new segments.
Yeah. If anything, the refresh Y could actually be a risk if they get it wrong somehow.
Well, okay, funny you say that. I think it might be a risk for Q4.
Explain.
I'm speculating here.
Dipping production, right? Dipping production during the changeover.
Let Brian speak on this. He'll say it better than I will, but yeah, exactly. That's what my word about.
The changeover impacts short-term deliveries, but I do think there's a possibility that they're doing it more in parallel, because in Austin, we've seen new stamping equipment go in. Berlin, they have room for it, but drones are only allowed to fly on weekends, so we may not have seen it go in. But there is, regardless, an opportunity for short-term impact during the changeover.
Yeah. Yeah, and then once that changeover happens and people can start buying those, how many people hold off now? Like, I'll be honest, I told a buddy of mine, he came up to me, he's like, hey, how do you like the Tesla? And I said, I love it. He's like, yeah, I'm between that and this BMW, not electric vehicle, BMW. And I was like, man, I love it. Like, this is a no-brainer. And he said, yeah, I know. My girlfriend had a Model 3 and I really love that one. And he's like, but I want the Y. It's a little bigger. It's what I need. And I told him I would hold off maybe till the new year. So how many people would do that once they see a refresh coming out in China? Now, we didn't see a lot of that, I don't think, for the 3, but the Model Y is a little different. Model Y is the #1 selling vehicle in the world, will probably be for the second year in a row. That having a slight pullback has really big effects for Tesla.
Yeah. Big issue. Okay. So Richard said he's going to join in about 10 minutes. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at this graphic here. This is if a Trump wins. I'm going to try to make this bigger. So this is a Trump win with U.S. Congress majority from Benchmark. Let's see what they are saying. Legislative overhaul of IRA. It's going to be the tax credits could be repealed. Legislative overhaul of parts of the BIL, EV charging investment program repealed. So even the EV charging is also the IRA guidance changes, stricter threshold and deadlines. I don't know what that one means. Reduced LPO program with the Department of Energy, continued support for the mining critical. So people are saying that even if they do get rid of the tax credits for the consumer to buy a vehicle, they will likely still maintain the mining because that is a national security issue. So it's still going to be very good for Tesla regardless of that. Redirection of unspent funding to other programs. The EPA emission standards for cars rewritten and weakened quickly. So this is the thing that the automakers have been clamoring for. Don't force us to dump our ICE cars. That is very likely going to be jumped. Easing of environmental regulations to support broader energy mix. Again, fossil fuel, not an enemy. Elon actually himself has been saying that fossil fuel should not be an enemy. It's okay. He's okay with that. No introduction of new EPA emission targets beyond 2032. More hawkish foreign and trade policy towards China. Increased tariffs on imports from China. And Trump has been talking about also importing tariffs on imports from Mexico. So I don't know how that's going to affect the automakers who make a lot of their cars in Mexico. Limiting outbound U.S. investments to China and Chinese investments in U.S. Reduce global critical mineral cooperation and supply diversification efforts. What's you guys' thoughts on this list?
Oh boy. Reduced money for charging will reduce charging. Reduce money for batteries will reduce batteries. Stricter guidelines on China means we may have difficulty getting the cells needed for the mega packs. I hadn't looked at this list before, but some of it is a little bit discouraging. And loosening the guidelines for emission standards definitely is a big win for, the big three, for all the gas car companies, and a big win for, I imagine, the oil companies as well. But I'm less sure if it's just emissions targets or fuel economy.
Yeah. From my read of this, all of this is really bad for Tesla if this happens. So
yeah,
it's interesting that the only obviously the preventing the Chinese to come into the U.S.
That was already in place. I mean, the sky high tariffs were already doing that, and I'm not aware of any Chinese manufacturer apart from Polestar with plans to build or who have actually built. Polestar has a factory already open, but yeah, that's interesting.
What do you think, Nick?
Oh, I think this guarantees Tesla's going to have a monopoly and autonomy in the United States, which will be the most profitable place to have autonomy.
What do you mean by guaranteed? Because it's going to let the automakers, and that's what it's designed for, keep their gas cars, keep selling their gas cars. In fact, they might actually improve the incentives for selling gas cars because they don't want them to die. So it's not going to be a monopoly.
You're not going to have autonomy in a gas car. It doesn't make sense.
I understood.
And Tesla would never license that out.
Yeah.
It'd be hilarious to watch a bunch of robotaxis just idling outside someone's window all night.
Here's the truth. When it comes to vehicles, looking in hindsight, I think like we look back all the way to the first vehicle. Clearly, the right architecture was electric all along. Not having a bunch of moving pieces that will break down, that have to be greased, like it doesn't make sense. Forcing mandates, forcing all these things, it slows, in my opinion, it slows down the progress. I know that seems counterintuitive, that, if I can incentivize people by giving them some money that they'll go and buy, like, I don't think that's how humans actually work. Some do, some who are just looking to get a quick deal, but I think when you don't put handcuffs on people and don't force people to do something, the market will figure it out. And eventually people will realize that the best vehicle is the one that don't have to maintenance, the one that just works, the one I can just charge at my house. I don't always have to go to a gas station. I think, and it'll incentivize, like, I know we're talking about the batteries and stuff, but it'll incentivize manufacturing here. It'll force companies to work on reducing their costs. If you want to be competitive, look, at some point we have to stop propping up all these companies and we have to start competing against China. And here's the truth. China's really good at what they do. And at some point, we have to be really good at what we do. And it can't just be one or two companies that are really good at what they do, and that's it. Like it's, like just look at our cities. Our cities suck compared to theirs. Like it's honestly embarrassing. The further east you go, the better the cities. Like it's insane. They're cleaner, they're more modern, they look better, they're designed better. I mean, like there's a certain point where we've got to have kind of a renaissance, and I don't think you have a renaissance when you're constantly having the thumb on the scale by government.
That's idealistic. The problem is, and I keep reminding everybody, this is a global scenario that we're in. China has their thumb on the scale. They're investing heavily on everything, and they fund everything.
And that'll be their downfall.
Let's see. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens here. But you're fighting one side, the Americans, who are going to let the ICE cars survive, and let's remove any kind of incentive. And then one country is like incentivizing like crazy on the future technology. Where are we 5 years from now? Where are we 10 years from now? And then by that point, it's too late for the Americans to try to catch up. So I've got Richard Hoffman joining us. Richard is a lawyer. I've asked him to join us because, we've been having all these conversations about what happens with Elon now that he's, Trump has won, and what is Elon's role in the government, and what about the conflict of interest? This is an unanswered question. How could somebody who's a CEO of multiple companies, they're actually very much government contractor, very involved with the government, and now you've got a leader. Can he still contain and maintain being a CEO of these companies and consult? Could he actually become a government employee or cabinet member? Some people are even asking, how would that work? Welcome, Richard. Do you have any kind of information to share for us to ponder about this?
Hi. Good morning and welcome. And I can't tell time, so I was late.
I know.
I don't know that like Central and Eastern. That confuses me. That 1+1. I skipped that day in elementary school. Yeah. So obviously this is like everything else, which makes things interesting and exciting. It's a novel situation because it's never happened before. So it's a first. And I took a look at it. Obviously, I'm not a government lawyer, an ethics lawyer, or something like that. But I browsed at it and kind of thought about, so what are kind of some of the issues? So what could he do? He could be like an informal advisor. He could like have lunch with Trump once a month. He could tell him, this is what I think you should do. Give him a notepad and he could pass it on, and he could function as that. He could actually function as a real advisor and as an employee, kind of as you asked the question. And then, so what happens? What are the issues? So if SpaceX is trying to get a contract from the government and Elon is involved with the FAA, can SpaceX get a contract from the government? Or is there an unwaivable conflict of interest? Again, we've never had that issue, but that would be the issue. Can you? And I would say probably it wouldn't be a good idea. I mean, I think the fact of, and I understand, to me, it's like Twitter. This is beyond maybe his financial benefit. It's for another purpose because he thinks he can do good for the country. But does it create problems with the company? It certainly does, and issues that have never been addressed. And it's not just now. The real issue is what happens 5 years from now. He could be engaged in something now that is permitted, but maybe there's a different administration 5 years from now. And I use 5 years, there's a reason. 5 years from now, and they decide maybe they should prosecute him for it. Mm-hmm. And it would be something that we perfectly, and obviously we've seen how political fighting can happen, and you could have prosecutions. The reason why I use 5 years because under the ethics rules, the government ethics rules, there's a 5-year statute of limitations on that, which is probably on purpose, so you could go beyond one term. That would kind of allow, if somebody really was a bad actor, it would actually allow somebody to go after them. and not be insulated from liability. So I looked at the standards of ethical conduct in the executive branch for employees, because I thought if he ends up being a formal advisor, he might be an employee and subject to those kind of rules. And it gives you kind of basic categories of things you have to be careful about to avoid. And I think all of these will be somebody's going to raise them, whether it happens or not. One side or the other is going to claim this exists. You can't provide inducement or coerce benefits. So you can't use your government position to induce or coerce anyone to provide a benefit to you or another. So again, is letting a contract qualify for that? Does giving you some beneficial change in regulation to permit you to have autonomous driving? Is that something like that? And again, it depends which team is deciding the issue. Because if the Republicans control, if they maintain control for the next 8 years, then this is irrelevant, because I don't think anybody's going to try to pursue anything against Elon. But if there's 4 years of Trump and then an opposite administration and they are vindictive and they want to, get their flesh, then that would be an issue. And if I were his counsel, even though I know nothing, like on most topics, I would tell him that. Now, he might ignore me, but I would say that's a risk. That's a risk he has. You may not use your government post to suggest that your agency or any part of the executive branch endorses organizations, products, services, or people. And I could go down, by the way, there's 5 of these, and each category is going to be the same, that if you want to read it strictly, then anything he does, excuse me, that might be construed that would benefit Tesla, SpaceX, any company, we might, again, depending on who's going to be the one who's making the decision and who's in office, it's arguably a problem, in my opinion. The specific one about if he's involved with a specific agency and it's a company that he's involved with, like the SpaceX and the FAA, that's strictly a problem. Now, there is another angle to this to look at. These are current regulations. And so part of, I think, what he's going to do, or at least when they were talking about what his role would be to reduce regulations and kind of to clear up the system and make it cleaner. And so theoretically, the regulations themselves could be changed. And the regulations could be changed to make things that maybe are not permitted now to be permitted. And that might be part of the process. But it wouldn't be as it exists now. And again, somebody would challenge it. And, it's, a lot of the stuff is going to be probably litigated anyway, because there's one lawyer, there's a lot of lawyers around, and, it's never been done. So somebody's going to want to kind of know what the standard is. But there is, as your question framed it, there are tremendous questions about conflicts, and there's no way, no matter how you structure it, no matter what you call it, to the extent he has real influence in the White House, then he's subject to these potential conflicts and the penalties that might flow from that.
Richard, some people were saying that what Elon might have to do is quit these companies that he's running today, and then handle it that way. He's not running the companies, but he might be able to still kind of like consult with them when he needs to.
Yeah, it would be kind of like the reverse thing is like, so when a president goes into office, all their assets go into a blind trust, and they can't basically touch them and influence them. Theoretically, that's the way it goes. So that's kind of the reverse of that. If Elon, in essence, stepped away from Tesla, there would be or Tesla, SpaceX, whatever, there would be no conflict if he acted and he had no control over the companies while he was acting in the government. He could do that on a temporary basis, and That would be, in my mind, that would probably be kosher, because again, it sounds like a blind trust in essence, kind of keeping them absolutely separate. He may also be able to do whatever he wants to do. Again, he's a pretty aggressive guy, in my opinion. So he may just be willing to just roll the dice, and notwithstanding whatever the potential conflicts are, he may be willing to go for it. He's got a lot of attorneys. He's got a lot of money. So he figures, if somebody challenges him, he can make it very difficult, for anybody to pursue relief. So it wouldn't surprise me if he just went ahead and did it, notwithstanding whatever the potential downsides are.
So I did want to say real quick, Herbert, that the after show where we address the Q&A will be delayed a few minutes, you guys, because we are having a great time talking with Richard Hoffman about some of the potential conflicts of interest in what could be an exciting time. Is there any framework by which it could be more than an advisory role? Do you know anybody?
I think it at some point in time, he's going to be deemed an employee. Once he has some influence. That's why I kind of gave like the advisor with the lunch advisor, because I think that happens now. I think people do that. They come in and they say their pitch, and they have influence or not, and that's okay. But I think to the extent that he's actually, and he kind of framed it this way, so he's going to have to overcome the burden, because when they were discussing what his role was, it wasn't just like a side role. It was really kind of basically auditing the departments of the government and deciding how we can make these work more efficiently, which means firing a bunch of people in essence. And that's not an insignificant role. I think with that, if he stays with that, and that's what his job function is, I don't really think there is a way to keep it absolutely clean. But again, that may not be a relevant factor, because he may decide it's worth pursuing anyway, and he'll take the risk down the road.
Now, I saw in the last Trump administration, Trump created a Science and Advisory Council on which Elon was a member, that he was also the first person to quit because he felt that he wasn't being listened to. And then, of course, the committee never reconvened. That seemed sufficiently informal to avoid conflict of interest. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think each regulatory body can set up their own advisory committees, and they meet rarely. Sometimes they do nothing. That's kind of what they end up doing. But that's something that at least is more defensible, because it suggests a much more informal and just kind of we're meeting kind of, again, like a lunch. That's more like lunch. We're going to meet, we're going to give our ideas, and then we'll mosey on, but we have no real power per se.
Any other questions you have, Herbert?
Oh,
Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Nico.
yeah. So two questions, or I guess like two ways that, like, I think they're going to find a loophole, right? Everybody does this. Everybody finds a loophole, and that's how they try to get away with something. But I was curious if there's a way to, would a loophole be if you're going to decide on a certain regulation to cut or a certain department to cut or whatever, if at the point of deciding Elon just recused himself, would that suffice enough? And if not, I guess another question would be if they did it very democratically, right? Like, hey, here are these regulations. This is why we think they're stupid. Public vote on it. Like, what if they did like a extremely rapid pace democracy, leveraging blockchain for, like, I mean, what if they actually did something where it's not him, he's just saying this is why I would, up to you, go make the decision, whether it's Congress or whatever.
Yeah, of course, I don't know the answer, but I would say that it's not going to be the result that's going to be the issue. So if somebody's going to challenge it, they're going to challenge it on process, not on the result. So it could work. It could work great, but they're going to say it still wasn't done in a fair way. Wasn't done appropriately. It was done because you shouldn't have done it, whatever. And that's because otherwise, because nobody who's for it is going to challenge it. The party that's going to challenge it is just not going to be someone who thinks it's a permissible act at all. So
Even then, if they have the Supreme Court, does it even matter? Like, is this like a stupid, like, this isn't even worth even discussing, because it could always just get challenged and raised and then dismissed.
yeah, but again, that's a matter of somebody pursuing it in court, and they can do it. Somebody might, but they're going to, it's somebody that's going to have to be willing. That's why I said Elon, because he's willing to spend money, and it takes time. We've seen it in other actions that it can take years for something to go, and the Supreme Court doesn't have to take a case, so that they can elect not to take something. And
Richard, what about a surrogate model? A lot of people are talking about that, right? So Elon, it does not get involved with the government. He assigns somebody else. That's who is part of the government now. And then he has lunch with this person, and this person's the one that does all of the work, because just like he does with his companies, he basically just gives advice and lets this other people take over and actually do the actions.
I guess it would depend on the interpretation of whether he has control over that person or not. If it's an employee of his, that makes it a harder argument, I think, to say he doesn't have maybe controlling influence. If it's a third party, I think it's an easier argument to say he doesn't have control over their decision making. So if it's like his senior vice president decides to go work, I don't really buy it. If it's Joe, if it's Herbert, then maybe
Vivek, right? It could be like somebody like that who's already a politician.
Sure.
Then
could be anybody.
Yeah,
could be anybody.
You become assigned the person who's in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency. I don't think so, right? It sounds like Elon he needs to be in charge of that. I kind of lean right now that he's going to have to leave the companies for a short period of time. What does the panel here think?
I think it's not a part-time job. I don't think it's one that you can just add to the pile of other companies he's running. It would be a full-time plus job. And I think that he would have to make a decision as to where he'd need to be. Legally, I don't know about the separations of that, and that's beyond my scope. But in terms of sheer time commitment, it's not a phone it in job. It's not a work from home job. It's a full-time plus hands-on, roll up your sleeves and get dirty kind of job, because we're talking millions of employees, trillions of dollars in budget. It's ugly.
Yeah. And the question is then, is there someone capable enough at each company to run it basically independently of him?
He's promoted 4 people in Tesla in the last month.
I agree with Herbert on this completely. Tesla has a very deep bench of executive, just a masterful team. SpaceX, Gwen Shotwell runs that place like a charm. The other ones, I'm not even sure he's there. X and XAI, I have less frame of reference, but I think they would be reasonably good. I just don't know how shareholders might feel about that, but that's not a question for me.
Yeah, I don't agree. Sorry. Go ahead. What I was going to say is Elon's the head engineer at SpaceX. Elon's the CTO over at XAI or at X. He's leading Optimus. He's personally spearheading that whole project. I think Elon's too involved. I think you're going to see a former PayPal mafia, maybe a David Sachs, be the proxy that could be in there. I think you're going to see a lot of stuff like that. I don't think Elon's going to do it. Or even then, he could be a former employee of Tesla that Elon trusts to go in there and be that proxy. But it is not, Elon would be more efficient to do that. He does that with all his companies, to your point, Herbert. He doesn't sit there. He's where the problem needs to be had. That's where his attention goes.
What I was going to say is, from a PR standpoint, if he said, okay, I'm going to leave my companies for 18 months, I'm going to not take salary, I'm going to dedicate all my time to cleaning up the deficiencies in the government, saving everybody billions of dollars a year. I mean, that's a pretty good PR stand. Nobody's going to really be able, if he does that and he steps away and he cleans up the the deficiencies in the government, saves every taxpayer, literally thousands of dollars. That's a tough one to say, it's a tough one to anybody argue about that.
I'm going to change my answer. It actually will answer what you said earlier, Nick. The government deficit is the biggest problem that we have today, and that's what he wants to solve. But the other thing that can solve all of that is robots. And if Elon decides, I'm going to leave, Tesla for a year and a half, instead of, why don't I focus on the bots? And that could actually solve economy and all the issues. It has an equal chance of doing it. Do I cut the government, or do I, introduce robots into this world? So it's a tough call for him.
Of course, he could do 18 months of setting up policy to introduce robots into the government, leave, and then introduce governments into the government.
Yeah. I think Elon would say we could do that in a week. I don't think it would take. I don't think it's going to take.
It's not a year
18
and a
months.
half. No,
No.
except that it's government. It's government, Nick. That's what Alexandra was saying. Don't underestimate how hard government is. This is not something that Elon can just do what he normally does.
Elon will assess. He'll write out what the prescription is, and it's up to you to take the prescription. Elon's prescription is going to be cut, delete. When something breaks, add it back in.
Yeah.
He's already said that. I'm not like he says that about his other companies. He's literally said that already about the government. So that's what he's gonna be like. I don't know what this is. Get rid of it. We'll see. Can we still run? We still run? All right. I guess we didn't need that.
Yeah.
He literally did with the supercharging team. Like if he's doing it with that, that's gonna be his whole. The government has so much red tape, bureaucracy. There's so many rabbit holes that it's the only way you can do it is to delete.
Yeah, but there's quite a difference between running, someone's ability to manage their own company and someone's ability to say that they're acting on behalf of the United States. He doesn't have the authority or the ability to do that. And he can do whatever he wants. The difference is his company, he controls, and if somebody sues him occasionally, whatever, if he fires 10 million government employees and they end up with, 10 million class action lawsuits that puts the government in litigation for the next 10 years, it's not the same thing. So it's certainly easy for him to do he certainly could, what you said, Nick, he certainly could go in and analyze and say, we need to get rid of 50% of the workforce. And if it was his company, he literally would the next day. But here it's a much more complex environment and probably going to be more frustrating to him than a private workplace because of those kind of restrictions, and probably because everybody's going to tell him not to do it.
Business is not politics is not business. Government is not a business. They're different things and they run differently. If you fire 1 million people from the government, 1 million people come in the next day for unemployment, even before lawsuits start. And the real trick is, if you want to cut all this money, you have to convince Congress and Senate to do it. And if it's affecting their district, they won't do it. They don't care if it's going to save you and me $1 million. If it's going to cost them 50 jobs, it's a no vote for them. They have to support their constituents. And if we're going to be slashing across the board, absolutely everybody, absolutely everywhere, it will get 2 votes in Congress.
I think you guys are thinking too much the way things have been and not how they might be changed. So, for example, yeah, you're right, Brian. If you get rid of a whole bunch of people, no, they don't collect welfare or unemployment. What they're going to do is they're going to have their severance. So that kind of takes care of that. Right? They'll have a 2-year severance is what they were talking about, supposedly. But also, all he has to do is give the prescription. He gives the prescription. It's not his job to fire people. It's not his job to implement. It's up to Trump and the House Congress. The Republicans are going to have the House and the Senate. All right. So it's up to them to get it passed. Now, what Elon can do is use this platform he bought not too long ago to highlight people who are roadblocking. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? And that's not going to be good for their reelection. So I think there's a whole other new chess game that can be played here that wasn't on the table before.
I was going to say, I'm not going to speak for Brian, but I'll speak for myself. I think the problem is the House of Representatives. House of Representatives, those guys run every 2 years. They're running for re-election when they get elected.
Yep,
So like they got
agreed.
elected last night, they're running for re-election already. Those are the group that are the most susceptible to being very reluctant to doing anything that might be perceived as negative for their own little district. And those are the people that are the most resistant to change. And to me, that's a problem. I mean, I'd love if the House terms were much longer than 2 years and they weren't running for re-election.
Okay.
Well,
I'm going to
go
jump
ahead.
in here, guys. We have to shut this down now. Appreciate the conversation. Richard, thank you for joining us. I'm begging you, please join the space that I'm going to hold at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern, which is 3 hours from now. And we're going to have Alexandra and Jeff and the Cyberbulls there. We're going to talk about the same topic. If you are on this channel, stay on this channel. And Brian White is going to answer a lot of the questions. He loves doing that. And people absolutely love that, their questions were answered. So please stay on that. Thanks, everybody. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Herbert did the math for you. You're on
Please,
mute.
please, Richard, please. I'm begging you,
You're-
dude. Please.
Richard, you're on mute.
Space. It's a space. Just call in wherever you are. Just call in. 3 hours from now. I can't hear you.
Yeah, he's on mute.
You're on mute. Can't hear you. We can't hear you.
You're on mute.
I was saying 3 o'clock, the big hands on the 12 and the little hands on the. That's what I was
3
saying.
o'clock Pacific time. Okay.
Yes, I know.
6
Okay.
p.m. Eastern. I don't know where you're from. That's why I gave you
I'm
Central.
in
I thought you were-
California. I'm in California.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
3 p.m.
Yeah.
Please
Where I-
join that. Please.
Yeah.
You're brilliant. Everything you said, just say it again. Please. It was brilliant. It's what
Yeah.
everybody needs to hear. This is the most critical comment discussion right now. This.
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand it. It's very impactful for the company, obviously. Companies.
So just say what you're saying, and then we'll have smarter people than me and Nick.
Yeah. Remind me what I said. So okay. Well,
Sorry, Nick. Sorry, Nick.
All right.
All right, buddy. See you
Okay.
guys.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.